Riding with Rhi. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. You are watching Woody and I go off on our first hack alone together at the new yard since I bought him. And I thought as we went hacking along together, I would answer some of the questions that you had about Woody, about the buying process, just getting into a little bit more detail than I was able to in my first vlog of buying Woody. So let's start with some of the basics. A lot of you had questions about Woody just in general, so let me run through his stats for lack of a better word. So Woody is a 16-1 8-year-old Irish sport horse. He is a skewbald colour and he comes from the bloodline of Cavalier Two for Joy, so that's his granddad. So that's where he sort of gets his colour from, and he's an Irish sport horse on his mum's side as well. I had a lot of questions about how I found Woody. So some of you might know that I've been looking for quite a few months, and when I say looking, I mean I was really searching all day, every waking moment I had looking. I had friends looking for me, tagging me in posts, sending me in horses all the time. And even though I looked at thousands of horses, I then went on and only spoke to really hundreds of owners, so sort of 10% of that. And out of that, I only actually viewed, I think I said 6 in my last video, but I think I actually only ever viewed 5 horses. Like, that's how narrow it went, because I was being so careful about what I wanted. And the funny thing about Woody, the person that sold Woody, was Steve Heel, who I actually spoke to Steve before I did this Q&A and asked his permission to share his details with you. And he said he would love a public shout out, so I am going to share that. So I got Woody from Steve Heel Eventing. He's fantastic. And Steve is actually one of the first people I ever spoke to when I started looking for horses. He had a big chestnut gelding who was beautiful, but in the end with that horse I decided he was probably a little bit too big for me, and a little bit too much of a blood horse, so I walked away from that. And then a few months later, a friend of mine sent me this advert and said, oh, my friend knows Steve, he's got this, you know, little skewbald in and he thinks he could be perfect for you. And that's how I found Woody. So it was sort of a full circle moment, which was really lovely actually, and I'm really pleased about that. Steve made me feel really comfortable. So a lot of you asked me what happened with the viewing. So you might have seen in my vlog, but I went the first time and viewed him with a friend who was super knowledgeable about horses, and he helped me to check him over and do all the physical checks. And then Steve trotted him up for me, and then he got on and did walk, trot, canter and jumped in the school, and then I rode Woody. And then I put a deposit down that day. I spoke to my coach and I was like, yep, he's the one. And they actually had someone coming to view him the next day. So I said, no, I really like him. I've got a really good feeling. And I put a deposit down and I asked if I could hack him out a few days later. So I came back, hacked him out a few days later with Steve, and I did everything I could think of on that hack to sort of test him. I put him in front, I put him behind. We went into traffic, light traffic, but we went into traffic, we went past horses. I did a gate on him. I made Steve walk away in the middle of a field whilst I stood still, just to see what he would do, and he was perfectly well behaved. And then all this time, since the first viewing and the deposit, we'd been parallel pathing, sorting out a vetting with a vet. So we actually were able to get the vetting done the day after our hack, which was great because it all happened quite quickly. And at the same time as speaking to the vet, I'd also been speaking to HFS, the horse transport company that I use quite frequently. You might have seen them in one of my old cross-country videos. I'd been speaking to them and said, hey, look, I'm looking at this horse. I said he may not pass the vetting, it might not go through, but if he does, do you think you could pick him up and bring him home? And they of course said yes. So everything was sort of parallel pathing at the same time. I had a lot of questions about the vetting, so I'm just going to go on my laptop and get up all of the details of a 5-stage vetting so that I can give you the correct information if you're listening to my little tip tap. So it's not a requirement to get a horse vetted if you buy them, but a lot of people do choose to do vettings, and there are 2 types of vettings that you can do. There is a 2-stage vetting and there is a 5-stage vetting. And a reason that you might get a horse vetted is you might have seen something whilst you've been viewing the horse that isn't enough to put you off completely, but is enough to make you want to get it checked out by a vet. There might be something you want to do with the horse, such as eventing or a high level sport where it's just important to get them vetted to know that they would be healthy enough to do something like that. And then of course, if you're spending a lot of money on a horse, it's a good idea to get them vetted. So I opted for a 5-stage vetting, and let me just walk you through what that means. So in stage 1, you have the preliminary examination. So this is where the vet will arrive and do a thorough external examination of the horse at rest. So they look at any signs of injury, disease, or physical abnormalities. They'll look at their teeth, they look at their eyes in a darkened area, and then they listen to their heart and lungs as well. So then they move on to stage 2, which is a walk and trot in hand. So similar to what you might have done yourself at a viewing, and they'll just watch the horse do, trotting up and down and walking up and down and look for any kind of abnormalities. And then they'll also ask the horse to be turned sharply on a circle and backed up for a few paces. If they pass that, they'll then go on to do flexion tests, which you might have seen a picture of Woody doing, which I've put up in my last vlog, where they sort of hold their leg up one at a time for a period of time, and then they trot them afterwards to see if there's any lameness after flexion. They will also lunge them on a firm surface, so we did all of this, and if they pass all of that, they'll then move on to the exercise phase. So the horse will be asked to canter or gallop if there's space to gallop, and the vet will basically listen to their heart afterwards, straight after, and then they will also listen to it again like 20 minutes after. So that's stage 4, which is the period of rest and re-examination, where the horse is allowed to stand quietly for a period, and during this time the respiratory and cardiovascular systems will be monitored as they return to resting levels. And then finally at stage 5 there'll be a second trot up. So the animal's trotted up again in hand to look for any signs of strain or injuries that would be made evident by the exercise. And then they'll do a blood sample. So they'll take bloods and store them for about 6 months. You usually don't get the bloods tested unless you need to in the future. And go through the big puddle. Whoops, big feet up. Good boy. It's basically an insurance policy that if something happens once you take the horse home and you think that maybe they might have had a drug in their system or something that masked any factors affecting their suitability for the purchase, that you have these bloods that you can take back. So at any point during a vetting, a vet might turn around to you and say, this has happened. And it's not a case of passing or failing, but they might say, look, this is flagged up. Do you want to continue? Say they find a sarcoid or they're lame in a certain way. And vettings aren't black and white. It's not a case of passing or failing and that's it. You should buy the horse or not buy the horse. The vet isn't there to tell you whether or not you should buy the horse. Some people still buy horses after failed vettings because the things that they're failing on are not important to that particular owner and what they want to do with the horse. And I should mention that before I actually did the vetting, me and the vet had a conversation on the phone where she asked me about the horse and asked me what I wanted to do with Woody, because that is going to impact what advice she gives me. And if I want to do, 5-stage eventing, that's not a thing. If I want to do, really high level eventing, then you're going to need a horse who can do certain things that a happy hacker doesn't have to be able to do. So these things are all important factors when it comes to vetting. And as I said, there's 2 types. So you have 5-stage and 2-stage, and the 2-stage would just include the preliminary examination and then the trot ups. And then it would be stage 3, 4 and 5 that would be a part of the 5-stage. If you're interested, I'll actually link out to one of the 5-stage vetting documents I was looking at online if you really want to deep dive onto what happens in a 5-stage vetting. So I had a lot of questions around how did I know Woody was the one? Was there like this click moment, or was it like a conscious thing? Like, how did I know? And the only way I can describe it really is I just felt really safe. I was so nervous to be riding because I hadn't ridden in a couple of months, and Steve is a 4-star event rider who events internationally, and I was riding in front of him, and so I felt so nervous. And he was lovely, actually. He made me feel really comfortable, but I was so nervous to get on Woody. And then when I did, and we just started warming up, there were 3 jumps in the school. There was a spread, there was an upright, and there was a cross pole. And we did the cross pole and the upright, and then without anyone telling me to or saying anything, I just went round and jumped the spread. And that doesn't sound like a big deal, but I know myself really well, and I'm not always super confident on new horses. And the fact that I just went round and easily popped this spread as if it were nothing, like, that really means a lot to me and says a lot about how I feel. And I just felt really comfortable and safe. And I just hadn't had that kind of feeling on any of the other horses that I'd been to try. And I don't think it was one particular second where I was like, oh, sparks flying. But you know, as I was riding round, I could imagine schooling him. We had got on in the stable. It was just this, it just felt right. That's the only way that I can describe it. It just felt right. And that's why I had no hesitation with, you know, putting down the deposit once I'd spoken to my coach. What do I plan to do with him? So I would like to do a bit of everything with Woody. My number one goal really is to do a bit of British eventing. I've never affiliated in any events. I've just never had a horse of my own, or a horse that I knew for long enough to affiliate with. And Woody also hasn't been affiliated in British eventing, which is really exciting because it means it's a first for both of us. And, you know, once you go affiliated in eventing, you get a record, and it's really cool that we'll be on that record together for the first time. So I'm really excited about that. A lot of people as well were asking me if Woody would be my forever horse, and the answer is yes. Unless anything went really wrong and, you know, we just weren't right for each other, which I just don't think is going to happen. I would never keep him, you know, and waste him purely out of the spite of being like, he's my forever horse, I'm not letting him go. But, you know, even if he retired early or he got an injury, like, he is my horse forever now. So, yes, he is my forever one. That's why I've taken the time to find him, because I don't like the idea of passing horses around if I can help it. So, yes, he will be my forever horse through retirement and everything. A lot of you asked about COVID prices, which I think I touched on a few videos back. Yes, COVID definitely has an impact on the prices of horses, for sure. I think it's a whole supply and demand thing. I've seen a lot of sides to the debate on this. You know, a lot of dealers saying that they weren't actually making any money before and the horses are now the prices that they should be. And I think if you are buying in the next year or so, like, the COVID the COVID tax, I guess we can call it, is something that you just have to have in your head and be considerate of when you're purchasing horses, and perhaps budget for as well, if possible. But yes, of course it has an impact, but it shouldn't be the only thing you're thinking about. You know, you really have to look at the breeding, the age, how suitable the horse is for you, any previous injuries, all the usual stuff. So don't let it be the be-all and end-all of what you're thinking about. This was a really great question. What other expenses other than buying the horse should you think about? So yes, there were a few things that you should be budgeting for when you're buying a horse. Of course, you want the cost of the horse, and you should have the funds available to do a deposit if you need them, because at the moment, you know, so many people are viewing horses that deposits are the only way to secure a horse after the first viewing. You should also be thinking about the cost of a vetting if that's something you want to do. So vettings range completely depending on where you are in the country, but if you're looking at a 5-stage, you're looking at least a few £100s. You're also going to want to consider the cost of transporting your horse. If you need to hire transport to get them home to you, you need to consider the cost of vaccinations. Your horse might need vaccinations as soon as they come to you. It depends. Same with shoes, livery, all the usual stuff, and insurance. So the vet actually told me this during the vetting, and I'm so glad she did, but she actually said, you know, depending on who you want to be insured by, they require certain things. So depending on how much you spend on the horse, you need more documentation. You want to insure that horse for loss of use, for example, so you might need a 5-stage vetting and x-rays. You might need a particular type of document with the old owner's signature on it. So these are things you should be considering as well with your insurance, how much you want to insure your horse for, what you want to do with them, how much you spend on them, and the vetting details and stuff. You have 30 days, I believe. When you are insuring a horse for the first time, your vetting information is valid for, I think it's 30 days. So you need to get that done quickly. And also, It is a legal requirement to update your horse's passport with you as the new owner, and you also have 30 days to do that. So that is something that's going to cost money, depending on where your horse is registered, British, Irish, whatever. You're going to have to send it off to the passport governing body, I guess, and get that done within 30 days, and that costs money as well. So those are things to be aware of other than the price of the horse itself. Outside of the usual spending, you know, budget things. And if you do want me to do an updated budget video this year with Woody, do let me know. I'm happy to do it. I did one last year on different types of livery, but I'm happy to do an update. And then, of course, if it's your first horse, like with Woody, I'm having to buy everything brand new. So boots, rugs, head collars, all the usual stuff. These are all things you should be factoring into those first few months of budgeting with a new horse. So it's definitely expensive. Somebody asked me what I opted for with insurance. So I'm with Pet Plan, and I've insured Woody for pretty much everything, including low level eventing up to BE90, because that's something I hope to do sort of in the next year, 2 years or whatever. But that's what I've chosen to do, and I've chosen to have him insured for vet bills as well, and of course public liability and what have you. Okay, questions about his personality. So somebody said, is he cuddly? I think if you've been watching any of my Instagram lately, you will already know the answer to this. He is very cuddly. I think it's obvious he's had a really lovely life because he's so comfortable around humans, and, you know, more than comfortable, I think he really enjoys human interaction, and it's really surprised me how quickly I've been able to start bonding with him. It's a really lovely thing to see. I know that before I had him, he's did a lot of, you know, riding club and show jumping and dressage, one-day events, hunter trials, fun rides, and he did a lot of fun stuff. And actually, the power of social media, someone that knew Woody as a foal got in touch with me this week, and they've shared pictures with me of him as a foal. So I'm going to keep those until his birthday, which is June 15th, and then I'll share them. So look out for those. But yes, he is a really, really cuddly boy. Someone asked me what his personality is like and what's my favourite part of his personality. From what I've gathered so far of getting to know him, he's very quiet. I think he's quite a sensitive soul in a good way, really sweet and gentle. He's quite nosy. He has always got his nose in something, in someone's business. I call him a parrot because he's always got his nose on my shoulder. He just seems to really want to snuggle. And if you've watched my Instagram lately, you will know what I mean when I say he goes into Hoover mode, which is this sort of long and low stretch that he is really happy and comfortable being in. So he's all around just a lovely chap. He has the most gentle, kind temperament, and that is something I really fell in love with from the very first moment that I met him. Really it was something I really noticed. He's just very sweet and kind, and I think if you have a horse like that, it just makes me think, gosh, when we've bonded in, you know, 3 years time, he's going to be the type of horse who would walk through fire for you because he loves you so much. And I'm really, really looking forward to building that kind of relationship with him because he's pretty awesome. How is the salt lick working out? Yes, so when I first bought Woody, I noticed that he licked me quite a bit, which is fine. A lot of horses are just licky horses. You know, this as me calls Mickey Licky Mickey because he licks her a lot. But I noticed that Woody was also licking objects like my box, and that more is a sign of salt deficiency. So I bought him a NAF Himalayan salt lick, put it up in his stable. And at first he was just sort of sniffing it and then looking away, and I was like, well, this is a waste of money. Why did I buy this? But then I heard him licking, and I looked over the door and I was like, he's licking it. And it's hard to tell day after day how much he's licked it, but he's licking me less, which is a good sign because I think he was licking me for the salt on my skin, and I think I can see where some of it is sort of come away, where he's been licking the salt, so that's good news. What's he like to ride? Is he forward, laid back, lazy? So he's a bit of a mix. I'm still getting to know him, but I'd say he's definitely more on the sort of laid back side, but he's definitely responsive. He's really nice off the leg. One thing that's going to be a big focus for the next sort of 6 months is building up his muscle and his top line, because at the moment he hasn't got a huge amount there. And although he's fit and he's ready to go, he's not super strong or as strong as he could be. So I think once he's a bit stronger and he's got more of a top line and he's feeling a little bit better in himself, I think we'll have more of a kind of forward Woody as well. But I think in general he's a really laid back guy. He's super soft in the mouth. He works beautifully, and I'm super excited to get working with him properly. Someone asked me how much did I save up to buy him. I mean, I've wanted a horse for 27 years, and for the last year in particular it's something that's been on my mind, so I've been saving for my whole life for this. I'd say, and I've budgeted for it down to the last penny really, so I was able to get here, but it's not easy for sure. It takes a long time, and I think that's why I'm such a big advocate of riding schools, of sharing, of loaning, because there is not one path to experiencing and enjoying horses, and I think that's a really important message. What is your favourite gait of his to ride? Oh, see, this is hard because my favourite gait in general is trot. Like when you've got a really good trot and they're in an outline and they're really light and they feel amazing, like that, there is nothing like that for me. But he actually has a real armchair canter, like real armchair canter, so that is delightful, and I love that. I'm just reading any more questions. I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's it. If I've left any questions out, feel free to let me know. And yeah, we have our first competition coming up at the beginning of April, a little dressage competition at home, just a good excuse to put him between the boards and the atmosphere and dress him up and see what happens. But I'm really excited, and it's so cool to see so many new people on this journey with us, so I really appreciate you being here. I hope that you've enjoyed this video, and yeah, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.